Welcome to this Lucky 44 tutorial on how to use countdown triggers and how they differ then from timeout triggers. So I've already set up here just a simple rifleman and two triggers beside each other along the road, and they're bounded by cones on either side. On the first trigger, I've set it up to be activated by blue 4, present. So it will detect any blue 4 in its boundaries, and it's going to count 5 seconds. Since I have it set on timeout, it's going to want the conditions to be met for the entire duration of the time that I have here. I've set them all, I'll set the minimum, mid, and maximum all to 5 seconds, so it will be exactly 5 seconds that it's looking for. So it's going to be looking for a blue 4, any blue 4, to be present in its boundaries for the duration of 5 seconds. That's what timeout is. And when it does, all that it's going to happen is I've set it to give a hint to the screen that says timeout trigger has fired. On the other hand, this one is set up exactly the same, except that it's a countdown. And the difference here is as soon as the conditions of the trigger are met, that is, as soon as some blue 4 enters the boundaries of the trigger, which I've set to be 5 by 6, it will fire, it will start counting, and it'll count to 5 seconds, and then it will fire. Watch how this plays out differently when we preview it in game. So the first one I'm going to look at is the timeout. And as soon as I step into the trigger, the timeout trigger, it would start counting. But when I leave the trigger, it's going to stop. So if I go in 1, 2, 3, but then I leave the boundaries, nothing's going to happen. If I go in and I stay in for 5 seconds, then on the top right of the screen I'm going to get the hint that says it's fired. On the other hand, the countdown trigger, as soon as I enter, it's going to start counting and then it's going to fire no matter what. So even if I enter and then I go right back out, it's counting, and in 5 seconds it's going to fire and say the countdown trigger has fired. That's the difference. Timeout, it wants me to be there for the duration of the time that it's set in order for it to be true. Countdown, as soon as the conditions are met, it starts counting down and then it will fire regardless of whether the conditions are still met at the time when the countdown is finished. That's the difference between countdown and timeout.